Listen to that sound. That is not music. That is not a dream. That is the actual voice of Saturn radio emissions rippling outward through the void, a scream without air, a howl without throat. For centuries, we looked up and saw only beauty, a golden giant suspended in darkness, crowned with light, spinning in silence. We called it the jewel of the solar system. We painted it in our books. We wrote poems about its rings. We admired it from a distance and felt safe in that distance. But beauty, as we have always known, is the most dangerous illusion. What if I told you that the most beautiful thing in our sky is also the most violent? That the serene image we've carried in our minds since childhood is a lie? That Saturn is not a peaceful ornament floating in the cosmic museum, but a colossus of chaos, a churning engine of gravity and rage that tears worlds apart just to adorn itself? What if the rings we marvel at are not jewelry, but evidence of murder? What if the storms we photograph are older than human civilization? What if everything we thought we knew about this distant giant was backward? Saturn does not simply exist. It dominates. It consumes. It reshapes everything around it with a gravity so immense that time itself bends in its presence. It is a ball of hydrogen and helium spinning so fast that it flattens into the shape of a pumpkin, bulging at the equator, compressed at the poles. It is a world where winds scream at over 1,000 miles per hour, where storms the size of continents rage for decades, where geometric nightmares carve themselves into the atmosphere and refuse to fade, where moons are born, crushed, and scattered into glittering debris. And we, from our tiny blue dot, call it beautiful. But what is beauty, really, except pattern? Symmetry? Order imposed upon chaos? We are drawn to Saturn because it looks like something we can understand. Rings, spheres, golden bands, clean lines against the black. It feels familiar, safe, but strip away the distance, strip away the telescope, strip away the false calm of a photograph, and what you find is something far stranger, far more terrible. A machine of destruction dressed in light. Welcome to the Lord of Chaos. Let us begin with the crown, the rings. From Earth, they appear as solid bands of gold, smooth and eternal, like something carved by a patient god. We see them in textbooks, on posters, in the imagination of children who dream of space. They seem fixed, permanent, a halo that has always been and always will be. But if you were to travel there, if you were to slip through the gulf of vacuum and cross into that glittering expanse, you would not find tranquility. You would find a grinder. These rings are not solid. They are not stable. They are a chaotic swarm of ice and rock, tumbling and spinning at thousands of kilometers per hour. Some fragments are the size of grains of sand. Others are the size of mountains. They collide constantly, shattering into smaller pieces, which collide again, which shatter again, in an endless cycle of violence. Imagine a blizzard of ice shrapnel, stretching nearly 300,000 kilometers wide, wider than the distance from the Earth to the Moon, and yet, in some places, only 10 meters thick, a blade, a disk of destruction so thin you could fly through it in seconds, but so dense with debris that you would be shredded before you even realized what was happening. The rings are not peaceful. They are a war zone, a field of shrapnel locked in perpetual orbit, spiraling inward, grinding themselves to dust. And the truly horrifying part, they are not decorations. They are not cosmic accidents. They are evidence. Evidence of a murder. The prevailing theory among planetary scientists is as elegant as it is tragic. Long ago, perhaps 1 billion years, perhaps only a few 100 million time at this scale, becomes hard to grasp a moon wandered too close to Saturn. Maybe it was knocked from its orbit by a collision. Maybe its trajectory simply decayed over millennia. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it crossed the Roche limit, the point of no return, the invisible boundary where Saturn's gravity becomes stronger than the moon's own gravity holding it together. And Saturn tore it apart. Not slowly, not gently. The planet's gravity grabbed the moon and pulled. The crust stretched, cracked, sheared away from the core. Rock separated from ice. The moon did not explode. It unraveled. It was pulled into ribbons, into fragments, into trillions of icy shards that spread out along its orbital path, forming a ring, a graveyard, a monument to gravitational cruelty. The beautiful rings we admire today are not jewelry. They are the scattered remains of a world that once had geology, perhaps even weather, perhaps even the conditions for something more. We are staring at a planetary autopsy, a crime scene frozen in time. And Saturn wears the evidence like a crown. But here is the question that haunts me. Was it just one moon? Or have there been others? How many worlds has Saturn devoured? How many more will it claim before the rings themselves spiral inward and vanish? Because the rings are not eternal, they are dying. Slowly, particle by particle, they are falling. Gravity is pulling them down into the planet in what scientists call ring rain. In 100 million years, they will be gone. Saturn will be just another gas giant, naked and unremarkable. The crown will dissolve. The evidence will be erased. So look at it while you can. What you are seeing is temporary, a moment in cosmic time, a fleeting arrangement of ice and violence that happens to be beautiful. But the strangeness of Saturn goes far deeper than its rings. Let us turn our gaze to the North Pole. Here, something impossible is happening, something that should not exist in nature. Nature does not make straight lines. Fluid dynamics, the physics that govern gases and liquids, should produce circles and spirals, vortices, eddies, organic, flowing shapes. Yet here, at the top of Saturn, spinning forever in the golden haze, is a perfect hexagon. Not almost a hexagon, not a vague six-sided shape, a perfect geometric figure, each side straight, each angle precise, carved into the atmosphere with mathematical clarity. It is a hurricane, a storm system so massive that 4 Earths could fit inside it. The walls of this hexagon reach hundreds of kilometers deep into Saturn's atmosphere, churning through layers of ammonia and hydrogen with winds that exceed 300 miles per hour. And at the very center of the hexagon lies something even stranger, a massive vortex, a spinning eye of red and gold that looks like a rose made of hurricanes, a whirlpool of gas so deep that we cannot see the bottom. It has been raging for decades, perhaps centuries. We do not know how long it has been there because we have not been watching long enough. Every image we take shows the same thing, the hexagon, unchanged, unblinking, staring out into the void like the eye of a god. Why does it exist? How does it maintain its shape? Scientists have proposed models involving wave patterns and jet streams, interactions between different layers of atmosphere moving at different speeds. They have built simulations. They have recreated hexagonal vortices in laboratory tanks. But none of this explains why Saturn, alone among all the planets, has chosen this form. Why geometry? Why precision? Why does chaos, when left to churn for long enough, carve itself into order? It feels intentional. It feels designed. And that feeling, that sense of wrongness, is what makes the hexagon so unsettling. It is not a symbol. It is not a message. It is a storm. But it looks like something more. It looks like a scar, a geometric wound that never heals. A reminder that the universe is stranger than we can imagine. And when Saturn gets angry, the entire planet changes. Every 30 Earth years, roughly one Saturnian year, one full orbit around the Sun, a monster wakes up. We call it the Great White Spot. This is not a localized storm. This is not a weather pattern. This is a planetary convulsion. A storm system so massive that it wraps around the entire circumference of Saturn, stretching across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Imagine a thunderstorm that covers the entire Earth, from pole to pole, ocean to ocean, flashing with lightning 10,000 times stronger than anything we have ever recorded. The Great White Spot churns up material from deep within Saturn's interior. Ammonia ice crystals, usually hidden beneath layers of golden haze, are dragged upward and scattered across the surface, turning the planet's familiar bands into brilliant white clouds. For months, the storm rages. Lightning arcs between towering anvil clouds. Winds accelerate, the temperature spikes, and then, gradually, the storm subsides. The white clouds disperse. Saturn returns to its familiar golden hue. But the storm does not die. It sinks. It retreats back into the depths, waiting. 30 years from now, it will rise again. 30 years after that, again. It is cyclical, predictable, a planetary heartbeat, a reminder that beneath those calm bands of yellow and tan, beneath the serene appearance, there is a chaotic engine of heat and energy, constantly churning, constantly waiting to explode. Saturn is not a dead world. It is not a frozen relic. It is alive in the only way a gas giant can be alive, through motion, through heat, through the endless recycling of energy from its core to its clouds and back again. It is a machine, a storm factory, a furnace wrapped in beauty. And it is not alone. Saturn rules over a massive entourage. More than 140 moons orbit this giant, ranging from tiny rocks a few kilometers across to worlds larger than some planets. Most are lifeless. Ice, rock, craters, but a few, a precious, terrifying few, are something more. Let us start with the imposter. The moon that should not exist. Titan. Titan is the only moon in the solar system with a thick atmosphere. In fact, the air pressure here is higher than on Earth. If you stood on Titan, you would not need a pressure suit. You would see clouds. You would see weather. You would see rivers carving through valleys, lakes pooling in basins, rain clouds drifting across an orange sky. It looks startlingly like home. It looks like Earth 4 billion years ago, before oxygen, before life, before everything changed. But do not be fooled. Titan is a twisted, toxic reflection of our world. The rain is not water. It is liquid methane and ethane. Liquid natural gas falling from the sky in slow motion due to the low gravity. The temperature is minus 179 degrees Celsius. If you jumped into one of Titan's lakes, you would not just freeze, you would shatter like glass. Your body would become brittle, crystalline, fragile. You would break apart before you even sank, and the ground beneath your feet would not be sand. The massive dunes of Titan, some stretching for hundreds of kilometers, are made of dark hydrocarbon grains, essentially plastic. Static charged plastic dunes, hundreds of meters high, shifting in the alien wind. When the wind blows, and it blows often, driven by tidal forces from Saturn, the grains rub against each other, generating sparks of static electricity. The entire landscape crackles with energy. A desert of oil and plastic, lit by orange haze, beneath a sky that has never seen blue. It is a world that mimics life, but is built from the ingredients of death. The chemistry here is the same chemistry that powered the first engines, the first factories, the first machines that burned fossil fuels and changed our planet forever. On Titan, that chemistry runs wild, unchecked, creating lakes and rivers and weather systems out of the same molecules we use to heat our homes and fuel our cars. It is a petrochemical nightmare dressed as a habitable world. And yet, scientists believe that beneath Titan's frozen crust, there may be another ocean. Not methane, water. A vast subsurface sea of liquid water, kept warm by tidal heating, hidden beneath a shell of ice 100 kilometers thick. 2 oceans on one moon, one on the surface, toxic and cold. One below, dark and possibly warm. 2 entirely different environments, 2 entirely different possibilities. If life exists on Titan, where would it live? In the methane lakes, adapted to a chemistry we cannot imagine? Or in the buried ocean, clinging to hydrothermal vents, feeding on chemical energy, just like life does in the deepest trenches of our own oceans? We do not know. And that uncertainty is what makes Titan so compelling. It is not just strange, it is a question, a puzzle, a world that forces us to reconsider what life can be. But Titan is not the strangest of Saturn's moons. That honor belongs to a tiny, bright ball of ice, barely 500 kilometers across Enceladus. For years, we thought it was nothing. Just another frozen rock, cratered and dead, reflecting sunlight like a polished marble. But then we looked closer, and we saw the tiger stripes. Long blue fractures at the South Pole. Cracks in the ice, glowing faintly in infrared, and from these scars, it bleeds. Giant geysers of water vapor shoot hundreds of kilometers into space at supersonic speed. Ice crystals, salt, organic molecules, all erupting from the interior of this tiny moon and spraying out into the vacuum. Some of the particles escape entirely, joining Saturn's E-ring. Others fall back down, coating the surface in fresh ice, making Enceladus the most reflective object in the solar system. Why is this happening? Because Saturn is torturing it. Saturn's gravity, along with the gravitational pull of other nearby moons, is constantly kneading Enceladus like a ball of dough. The moon flexes, the ice cracks, heat builds up in the core, and beneath that thick frozen shell, hidden from the sun, protected from the radiation and cold of space, lies a global ocean of warm liquid water. It has salt, it has heat, it has organic molecules, it has everything life needs. And in the deep, dark pressure of that alien sea, shielded from everything, something might be swimming. We went to Saturn looking for gas and rock. We might leave having found neighbors, but to learn these secrets, we had to make a sacrifice. In 2017, the Cassini spacecraft, our lone messenger at Saturn, our eyes in the void, the machine that had spent 13 years circling this giant and its moons, was running out of fuel. It had been launched in 1997, a time when the internet was still young, when most people had never heard of exoplanets. when Saturn was still just a fuzzy image in textbooks. For 2 decades, Cassini travelled. 7 years to reach Saturn. 13 years in orbit. It photographed the rings in unprecedented detail. It discovered new moons. It watched storms form and dissipate. It flew through the geysers of Enceladus, tasting the ocean beneath. It peered through the haze of Titan, mapping lakes and dunes. It sent back over 400,000 images. It rewrote our understanding of the Saturn system. And then, its mission complete, its fuel nearly gone, Cassini faced a final choice. NASA could have let it drift, let it run out of power and become another piece of space debris, tumbling through the system forever, a silent tomb for its instruments. But that would have been a risk. Without fuel, without control, Cassini could eventually crash into one of Saturn's moons, into Enceladus, into Titan. And even though the spacecraft had been sterilized before launch, even though every precaution had been taken, there was still a chance, however small, that Earth microbes could have survived the journey, could have hidden in crevices, could have endured the radiation and cold. And if Cassini crashed into a world with liquid water, with organic chemistry, with the potential for life, it could contaminate that world forever. We could destroy the very thing we came to find. So NASA made a different choice, a deliberate one, a final one. They ordered Cassini to commit suicide. On the 15th of September 2017, after completing its final orbit, a trajectory carefully designed to skim the inner edge of the rings, to gather data no probe had ever gathered before Cassini turned towards Saturn. It oriented itself, pointed its antenna at Earth, and dove. It fell through the upper atmosphere at over 70,000 miles per hour. The air, if you can call it air, grew thicker. Friction mounted. Heat built up on the spacecraft's hull. Cassini was not designed to survive atmospheric entry. It had no heat shield, no landing system. It was a machine built for the vacuum of space, now plunging into a gas giant. But even as it began to break apart, even as the heat started to melt its instruments, Cassini kept transmitting. It sent data about the composition of Saturn's atmosphere, measurements no other probe had ever taken. It sent information about the magnetic field, the temperature, the density of particles in the upper cloud layers. It fought to keep its antenna pointed at Earth, to maintain the signal, to send every last bit of information home before the end. And then, 1 minute and 31 seconds after entering the atmosphere, the signal stopped. Saturn showed no mercy. The heat and pressure tore the robot apart. It melted, it vaporized. It became part of the planet it had studied for 13 years. The aluminum, the plutonium, the gold, the instruments that had taken 2 decades to build and launch, all of it mixed into the swirling clouds of hydrogen and helium, scattered across the storms, dissolved into the giant. Cassini is still there, not as a machine, as atoms, carbon, silicon, iron, drifting somewhere in the depths of Saturn's atmosphere, falling toward the core, becoming part of the planet's endless churn. It was a death, but it was also a kind of immortality, and it was necessary because we are not done with Saturn. We are not done with Enceladus. Someday, perhaps in the next decade, perhaps in the next century, we will return. We will send another probe. We will land on Enceladus. We will drill through the ice. We will lower cameras and sensors into that dark ocean and search for whatever might be there. And when we do, we cannot risk bringing contamination with us. We cannot poison the well before we drink from it. So Cassini had to die clean, far from the moons it loved, consumed by the planet it orbited. It is a reminder that exploration is not just about discovery. It is about responsibility, about knowing when to stop, about protecting the unknown even when it costs us. But even without Cassini, Saturn continues, indifferent, eternal. Or is it? Saturn feels permanent. When we look at it through a telescope, when we see those golden bands and glittering rings, it seems like something that has always existed and always will exist. A fixture of the solar system, a landmark in the sky. But permanence is an illusion. Everything changes, everything decays, even planets. The rings, for instance, are dying. Gravity is slowly pulling them down into Saturn. The process is called ring rain. Particles at the inner edge of the rings lose energy through collisions and interactions with Saturn's magnetic field. They spiral inward. They enter the upper atmosphere. They vaporize, becoming part of the planet's chemistry. Oxygen and hydrogen rain down onto Saturn at a rate of several tons per second. The rings are bleeding into the planet that created them. In 100 million years, a blink of an eye in cosmic time, but in eternity by human standards, the rings will be gone. Saturn will be just another gas giant, naked, unremarkable. The crown will dissolve. The evidence of ancient violence will be erased. Future astronomers, if they exist, if they look back at our time, will see images of Saturn with rings and wonder if we made them up. They will find it hard to believe that such a structure could ever exist. But for now, the rings endure. Fragile, temporary, beautiful in the way that all temporary things are beautiful because we know they will not last. And Saturn itself? What is its fate? In about 5 billion years, the Sun will begin to die. It will swell into a red giant, consuming Mercury, consuming Venus, possibly consuming Earth. Its outer layers will expand past Mars, flooding the inner solar system with heat and radiation. But Saturn, distant and cold, will barely notice. The temperature will rise slightly. The ice on its moons will begin to melt. Titan's atmosphere will thicken. Enceladus's geysers will strengthen. For a brief moment, cosmically speaking, Saturn's moons might become warmer, more active, more hospitable. But then the Sun will collapse. It will shed its outer layers and become a white dwarf, a fading ember barely larger than Earth. The solar system will grow cold. Saturn will freeze. Its storms will slow. Its moons will lock into icy silence. The hexagon will fade. The great white spot will stop rising. The machine will wind down. And eventually, trillions of years from now, if Saturn is not ejected from the solar system by a passing star, if it is not swallowed by a black hole, if it simply drifts through the expanding universe as the stars burn out one by one, it will evaporate, slowly, particle by particle. Quantum mechanics will allow hydrogen atoms to tunnel out of the planet's gravity well. Over timescales so long that the human mind cannot grasp them, Saturn will dissolve into the void. Not with violence, not with drama, just a slow fading, a dissipation, a return to the nothingness from which it came. But that is the far future. That is the heat death of the universe. That is a timescale so abstract it feels like fantasy. For now, Saturn is here. Real, massive, beautiful, terrifying. And it forces us to confront something uncomfortable about ourselves. We are drawn to beauty. We cannot help it. It is wired into us, perhaps by evolution, perhaps by culture, perhaps by something deeper. We see symmetry and we call it good. We see order and we call it divine. We see Saturn golden and crowned and geometric, and we feel awe. But beauty is not morality. Beauty is not safety. Beauty is just pattern. And patterns can be violent. The rings are beautiful because they reflect light in a certain way, but they are also the shattered remains of a world. The hexagon is beautiful because it is geometric, precise, mathematical. But it is also a hurricane that has been raging for centuries. Titan is beautiful because it looks like Earth, but it is a toxic wasteland where rain is poison and the ground is plastic. Beauty is the ultimate trap. It makes us think we understand something when we do not. It makes us comfortable when we should be cautious. It draws us closer to things that could destroy us. And Saturn is the perfect example. For centuries, we looked at it through telescopes and felt safe. It was far away. It was just light, just an image. We painted it. We wrote about it. We taught children to recognize its shape. We called it the jewel of the solar system and moved on. But then we built machines. We launched probes. We flew into the rings and realized they were a grinder. We studied the storms and realized they never stop. We analyzed the moons and realized some of them might harbor life. We got close, and the closer we got, the stranger it became, the more violent, the more incomprehensible. Saturn is not peaceful. It never was. We simply could not see the violence from where we stood. And that raises a question. What else are we misunderstanding? What else are we calling beautiful when we should be calling it dangerous? What other traps are we walking into because we like the way something looks? The universe does not care about our aesthetics. It does not arrange itself for our pleasure. The fact that Saturn has rings is not a gift. It is not art. It is the consequence of gravity and orbital mechanics, and a moon that wandered too close. The fact that the hexagon exists is not a message. It is not a sign. It is fluid dynamics operating at planetary scale. The fact that Enceladus has an ocean is not a miracle. It is tidal heating, physics, chemistry, the same forces that shape everything else. But we see it and we feel wonder. And that wonder, that sense of awe in the face of something vast and strange, is not wrong. It is human. It is valuable. It is, perhaps, the thing that makes us want to explore in the first place. The trap is not in feeling wonder. The trap is in stopping there, in seeing beauty and assuming we understand, in admiring the rings without asking where they came from, in looking at the hexagon without questioning why it exists, in calling Saturn peaceful because it is far away and we cannot hear it screaming. Saturn is a reminder that the universe is not gentle, that nature, left to itself, produces violence and chaos and destruction as often as it produces order, that beauty and terror are not opposites, they are partners. They emerge from the same forces. Gravity creates planets and also tears moons apart. Fluid dynamics creates weather and also hurricanes that never end. Chemistry creates oceans and also lakes of methane where nothing can survive. The universe is not designed for us. It is not designed at all. It simply is. And we, small and fragile and temporary, are trying to make sense of it, trying to find patterns, trying to name things, trying to understand why a storm at the North Pole of a distant planet would choose to be a hexagon. And maybe that is the real lesson of Saturn. Not that it is beautiful, not that it is terrifying, but that it is both. And that we, standing on our tiny blue world, looking out at the jewel of the solar system, must learn to hold both truths at once. Saturn is the most beautiful thing in our sky, but beauty can be deadly, and perhaps that is why we keep looking, why we keep building probes, why we keep sending machines into the void to study worlds that could kill us in an instant. Because beauty, even dangerous beauty, demands to be understood. It calls to us. It challenges us. It asks, are you brave enough to look closer? Are you willing to see me as I really am? For 13 years, Cassini answered yes. It looked, it measured, it photographed. It dove through geysers and flew past moons and skimmed the edges of rings. It sent back data that will take decades to fully analyze. And when it had nothing left to give, it gave itself. It became part of Saturn, a sacrifice, a merger, a human-made machine becoming part of an alien world. And now, when we look at Saturn, we are looking at a grave. Not just the grave of the moon that became rings, not just the grave of Cassini, but a reminder of our own mortality, our own smallness, our own fragility in the face of forces we can barely comprehend. Saturn does not care that we find it beautiful. It does not care that we named it after a god. It does not care that we spent billions of dollars and decades of work to study it. It spins, it storms, it tears moons apart and wears their remains as jewelry. It will outlive us. It will outlive our species. It will outlive the Sunday. And yet, for a brief moment in cosmic time, we were there. We touched it. We tasted its moons. We heard its radio emissions. We mapped its clouds. We became part of its story. That is not nothing. It will not save us. It will not stop the storms. It will not bring back the moons that were destroyed. But it matters, because understanding is the only tool we have, the only way to make meaning in a universe that offers none, the only way to take something vast and terrifying and beautiful and say, I see you, I know what you are, and I am not afraid. Except we are afraid we should be, because Saturn is a reminder that we are not in control, that we live in a universe governed by forces indifferent to our survival, that the same gravity that keeps us anchored to Earth could, under different circumstances, tear us apart, that the same chemistry that makes life possible also makes it fragile, that beauty is not safety. So look at Saturn while you can. It is a temporary masterpiece of gravity and violence, a monument to chaos dressed in light, a graveyard spinning in the dark, crowned with the shattered remains of worlds that came too close. It is the most beautiful thing in our sky, and it is the most honest thing in our sky, because it does not pretend to be gentle. It does not hide its violence behind soft words and comforting lies. It shows us exactly what it is: a storm, a machine, a colossus, a killer, a jewel, all of it, at once, forever. And maybe, in the end, that is what we need. Not comfort, not reassurance, but truth. The truth that the universe is vast and strange and beautiful and deadly. That we are small, but not insignificant. That we can look at something like Saturn and feel wonder and terror in equal measure. That we can send a machine across 1 billion miles of emptiness to touch an alien world, and when that machine dies, we can mourn it. Because that, too, is human. To care about things that do not care about us. To find meaning in places meaning does not exist. To look at a planet that could kill us without noticing and say, you are beautiful, you are terrible, you are worth understanding. Saturn is not peaceful, but neither are we. We are explorers, dreamers, builders of machines that die in the atmospheres of distant giants. Creatures who look at the void and refuse to look away. And as long as we keep looking, as long as we keep asking questions, as long as we keep reaching out into the dark, then maybe, just maybe, We are more than small. Maybe we are part of something larger. A story that includes Saturn and Earth and Cassini, and the moons that were destroyed, and the oceans that might hold life. A story that began with gravity pulling dust together 4.5 billion years ago, and continues now, here, with you reading these words and thinking about a golden giant in the sky. Saturn does not know we exist, but we know it exists. And that asymmetry, that one-sided relationship, is the foundation of all science, all exploration, all wonder. We reach out, we touch the untouchable, we name the unnameable. We die trying to understand things that will never understand us. And somehow, impossibly, that is enough. So look at Saturn tonight, if the sky is clear. Find it in the southern sky, that steady golden point that does not twinkle like a star. Know that you are looking at a world, a real place, not a symbol, not a myth, a ball of gas and liquid and maybe solid metal at the core, wrapped in storms that are older than your country, your culture, your species. Know that it is surrounded by rings made of dead moons. Know that it is orbited by worlds of methane rain and buried oceans. Know that a machine we built died there, became part of it, scattered its atoms across alien clouds. Know that it is beautiful. Know that it is deadly. Know that it is both. And know that we looked, we saw, we understood, if only a little. And that is the victory. Not over Saturn, not over nature, but over ignorance, over fear, over the temptation to turn away from things that are too vast, too strange, too terrifying to face. We looked anyway. We always do.